Good evening and welcome everyone to IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice for your everyday life. So, how does IKYA Live work? We take a news topic of the day and we unpack it to look at the spiritual principles involved. And then spiritual teacher IKYA assists us to raise our consciousness and look at a bigger picture around that news topic. And by doing that, we get a deeper and wider understanding of the world around us. And we can also then serve better as sort of spiritual assistance to the world in their growth. So that's how we take the news and kind of elevate it to a different level. Before we get started with tonight's juicy topic, please down below like and share tonight's episode with fellow spiritual seekers, family, and friends, and follow us on all the social media platforms ikya.official at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Now, tonight's topic is kind of it's a annual or like sort of often favorite topic of spiritual seekers, and though it's been with us from sort of the early times of spiritual studies, especially now with modern spirituality, this topic of the role of money and success and wealth, and really is spirituality and success compatible? This is a classic question that we just seem to keep wrestling with in modern spirituality. So we wanted to go right at it tonight because, as we know, the world is in a lot of economic flux. There's not really an official economic crisis that's been established, but we all know that the world around us is changing dramatically. Industries are shifting, artificial intelligence is taking over in different areas. So we know that the economy is changing dramatically, and it seems uncertain and unstable. So what do we do, and how do we as spiritual seekers deal with money, success, finance, and the economy? So let's go ahead and turn it right over to you, IKYA. We ask the question, are spirituality and success and money compatible?
Absolutely. There are a lot of misunderstandings around this, and I find it kind of fascinating that so many people involved with spirituality or religion are quite poor. And there are many reasons for this, but hopefully we can help you weed out some of the misunderstandings. It's kind of an established truth that being poor makes you spiritual, right? Or if you want to serve God, you have to be poor, you have to give away everything. And why is that? It's kind of strange, right? But the reason with a lot of these misunderstandings and a lot of spiritual practice and all of that comes from observing individuals in higher levels of consciousness. So, when it comes to this, it's important to understand that when you are in a higher level of consciousness, you will be more detached. Now, what that means is that you will be more present. Detachment versus attachment is basically when you, in a lower consciousness, are projecting onto the world what you are in denial of. And that is your karma, right? So when you are shown life, when you're being shown yourself, and you are not in a state of consciousness where you can comprehend or interact with it, you will basically be in denial. And whatever you are not able to grasp, whatever you're not able to accept, you will push away, right? So you will project that onto the world. So then you need the world. And when you project, you will immediately recognize your own mirror image, and you will have an attachment to that, believing that that particular manifestation is necessary for your own survival. And that is what attachment is. It's basically you gluing yourself to whatever you are projecting whatever you are in denial of about yourself onto the world. Now, detachment means not pushing away the world as a canvas, right, as a big screen for our projections. It simply means that we gradually, as we rise in consciousness, we accept more. We have more insights, we have more realizations about the world and ourselves. Less denial. So we project less. Right? And each step of the way, we project less and less, and we integrate more and more, meaning that our presence gets stronger. Because projection is the opposite of presence. Presence is that it's you. It's in reality, it's in the world. And that, in a lower level of consciousness, you only see, oh, right, less projection, less things, because when you are more detached, you don't need things. They can be there, you can interact with them, you can have fun, but you don't need them to project yourself onto. And that's the big difference, right? So when you interact with the world, you do it from a place of presence. And you're able to accept yourself, you're able to accept what it is you're interacting with for real, not as a medium for your own projections, right? So you don't feel the need to own and control, which is attachment. So in a low level of consciousness, that looks like, oh, right, you have no things. You don't care about matter. And then you begin to think that, oh, right, so the key to higher level consciousness is to not relate to this world, to push away all things, because they will be a distraction from my focus on God. And then people started doing that, believing that that would lead them to a higher consciousness, but instead it leads to poverty. It leads to less opportunities to interact with life, because when you are still in a low consciousness, you're still in denial. There are still things you don't understand. And you only hope, your only way to interact with that and gradually learn is through projection. And then you need things to project onto and to attach yourself, but because it's through attachment you understand what belongs to your journey. Because when you're attached to something, you want it and you gravitate towards it. And that manifestation will then represent your own karma, right? So you actually need it. You need attachment until you've learned, until you've integrated that whatever it was that you were projecting. It's the only way, because when we are in denial, when we have these blind spots, we don't understand. We need the projection. So when we then try to push away, all these screens and canvases to project upon, it doesn't mean that we move into higher level of consciousness. It means that we move into a deeper state of illusion, right? Because we have all these blind spots, but now we can't see them. And all of a sudden we feel free. Ooh, I'm in a high level of consciousness because I have no karma anymore. It's a trick of the mind. It's a trick of the ego, because you still have your karma intact. You've just removed your means and tools to interact and to learn and to grow spiritually. So, and this is often also what results in people engage in this type of practice, why they end up being corrupt, why they end up falling flat on their faces spiritually, because they have not worked on their karma. They're just in a denial. So, but these myths have a tendency to stick, right? It comes from observing people in what people assume are higher level of consciousness and then trying to copy their behavior, which is logical, right? But what we need to understand is that when we do something, it depends on the intention, right? The level of consciousness, and also the space, because the space will also carry different variations of laws of nature depending on the consciousness. So when you're in lower consciousness, you can't copy that. You can't emulate it. You will not get the same result, right? But because when you move into higher level consciousness, detachment will be one of the side effects. It will be something that one can notice. I do no longer need things in the world to project myself onto because I'm present. But it means I now interact with the world based on what it actually is. Right? So, this is why, when you look at a lot of the traditions from Asia, why they seem to love poverty, and why people are staying in poverty also, because if the goal is to leave this world, why would you engage? Why would you invest? Why would you try to achieve something when many of the teachings and religions are telling us that, no, this is a place of suffering, therefore we need to leave? Right? So we should just let go of everything, try to be detached, and then just focus on God and hope that we can just leave. It's the same thing. We're not then working on our karma, but we believe that we are. So this is just part of the fabric of spirituality on this planet, and it's a big misunderstanding. You would not incarnate here if you didn't need it. When you are in denial, you need to project. It's the solution, not the problem. It's by interacting with your own projections that you will heal. And you have to do that in the horizontal worlds. So we have to be part of the world. We need to interact. We need to test things out, just like everybody else. But we can learn, right? We can figure out how to heal. But this misunderstanding has really ruined a lot for a lot of people throughout history. And think of the world today. Humans have never had more opportunities than right now. We have more things and manifestations and spaces to project, right? So we can study and unfold ourselves. And that's what we need to do. We should not try to get away from here. We should do the opposite. And often also I talk to so many people in modern spirituality that are caught up in this illusion that because they are dysfunctional, meaning that they're not able to have success in life, they create the story, well, I'm beyond this, right? The world is not ready for me. I'm simply too advanced for this planet. So, I'm not allowed to interact with this kind of low-life civilization, right? It's, again, a trick of the mind, just the ego. We will always try to justify ourselves through the ego because we're supposed to believe that we are kind of the blueprint of everything right and good, right? But in modern spirituality, there's so much of this. And because at the same time, secretly, like you say, I'm so detached, I'm above all of this. Everybody still wants a good life. What do? Instead of investing and working and trying to achieve things, we turn to magic. This is why people just want to learn how to manifest, right? And it comes from this also egocentric way of thinking that, well, I'm such a great channel. I'm serving everybody all the time. Of course, God will reward me by just giving me things. I should not have to work, right? Because I'm not even supposed to be here. Obviously, I was sent as an angel to serve people. And I shouldn't have to be part of this, right? I should have had more. I don't understand what happened, but I'm sure God will, correct his error and just give me when I focus. Because that's a spiritual way of doing it. I don't have to interact horizontally. I can just focus and it will just happen, right? No. It's not how it works. It's It doesn't work like that at all. The thing is, how God takes care of you is by letting you be confronted with your karma. That's the greatest gift. Placing you in this world, where it can be magically confronted with your karma through projection because you're not able to do it in yourself, right? On your own, you're blind. This world makes you see. So we're already in a magical place. This is not the problem, it is the solution. Because our blind spots will be projected and we can interact. That's the magic. This is how God takes care of you. Not by giving you what you want so you don't have to deal with your karma. And the thing is, we all have a lot of, dysfunctionality. And often, when we are on a spiritual path, we're even more dysfunctional than normal people because we've been seeking God, seeking the spiritual reality and truth for lifetimes, right? Often with these types of belief systems that I have just described, meaning that we're less productive. We just want things to be healed, right? We pray for a solution instead of finding it ourselves. This is like one of the things the more spiritual beings we believe in, the more dysfunctional we become. You would think it's the other way, right? But the thing is, part of the spiritual and religious way of thinking is that I'm a sinner, right? Or I'm not capable of doing things on my own. I need help, I need guidance. So we wait for guidance. And we're also afraid of doing something wrong because we need to follow spiritual law, right? So we want to wait for the sign, wait for the right moment. And we need someone to tell us that it's okay. We need approval, we need confirmation, we need right moment, we need all of that. And we need someone in detail to tell us what to do, right? There are so many people who want me to explain to them in detail what to do in every situation in life. Of course, I don't. That doesn't stop people from trying, though. But it's understanding that that is part of the kind of the whole dysfunctional culture that modern spirituality is. Again, the more spiritual entities you relate to, and through that wishful thinking and prayer, and sometimes also through meditation, we just want guidance, 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 guidance. And it's because we see that what I do here is only a way for me to get rewarded in a higher place. If I do the right things, I will have a higher consciousness, or in religion, I will enter heaven, or whatever, which means that we don't really care about what we're doing. It's just means to achieve something else. And that's what we're really trying to do, so we need guidance to do it right. So we don't learn. Because why should we, right? This is no point, it has no value. And try to build a career that way. It is difficult when you want to do the right thing. We need to love to just do things. We need to love to fail. We need to love to learn. And we need to let go of this notion that everything has to be right, that there is one correct way to do it. And also because, I'm a servant of God, or whatever, I need to be told exactly what to do, so that will maintain my identity of being a divine servant. It's all crap. It's not how it's done. If you want to serve life, if you want to serve God, you need to be an expert. You don't become an expert by not doing something. You do not become an expert on the world by not taking part, by not engaging, by not being productive and successful in this world. And yet, spiritually and religiously, people often think that. Again, it's a principle you can never become an expert in something you are refusing to do. Right? You become an expert by doing it again and again and again and again and again. Failing, getting up, doing it again, becoming better at it, and so on and so forth. So if you want to serve, you need to be the best. What can the divine possibly do with someone who is deeply dysfunctional and can't even take care of his or her own life? You're not too advanced for this world. You're actually not advanced enough. And the ego tries to compensate. Right? What we'll learn as we grow spiritually is that we need to have a lot of expertise. Life will put us in different situations so that we may develop expertise in all fields of life. How else can we assist others? Right? If we're not an expert, if we're not better at something than the person we are assisting, how can we possibly be of any use? It's that. We need this world. This is the magical place. This is where we grow the most. This is where we learn about divine law, about how to reach higher consciousness. We need this. So, God has already given you everything because you've got this. The rest is you and how you are, making use of it or not. The thing is, when we have success or not, it reflects the consciousness of survival based on the space we're in. Remember, although we are together here, we're really not in the same space. So you've experienced this in your own process and growth, is that you enter new spaces, right, where you're being trained in new principles. Every time we enter a new space, we don't know anything, right? And there are bigger spaces where our entire expertise, or lack thereof, when it comes to survival, will be manifested. And then we're poor. Not just poor economically, it could be emotionally, mentally, it could be in so many different ways. There are so many different types of poverty. Sometimes we can experience all of them at the same time. But it simply is a rendering and a mirror of your own level of competence, meeting the natural laws of the space you find yourself. And when you've learned, you will be successful. Because now you understand how to exist in that particular space. You're able to work with the laws of nature. I've compared this to farming, right? If you buy a farm and you don't know, which side is which on a potato, right? You'll have no idea what you're doing, and when you start growing things, you will fail. That's poverty. As you figure it out, you will have wonderful crops and more, bigger crops, better crops. That's success. You have learned, right? So when we are dysfunctional, when we do not achieve success in the space we're in, it means that we're still a beginner. It's not that we're too advanced. You're never too advanced for your own karma. So it's important that we open ourselves to this world and not see this as a problem simply because we're dysfunctional. We need to let go of all these misunderstandings, right? And jump into the world as much as we can. If we want to operate in higher consciousness, we should be able to master the horizontal realities more than anyone else. And then look at your life, and you will see there's probably a potential for improvement. Do we have any questions?
Actually, I've been sitting here reflecting that this topic tonight reminds me very much of an episode of Family Guy where the dog Brian wrote a book called Wish It, Want It, Do It. And half the book is blank pages where you're just supposed to write down your wishes. And that this attitude, this misunderstanding in modern spirituality doesn't even get to the do it part, because we often just stop in the wish it, want it, fantasize, and then suffer when we don't get it. But what really struck me as you've been talking is that when we choose this mindset, we really step out of being able to be leaders in, for example, in this time of economic flux and change and all of that. If we're taking this mindset that really, we should be impoverished, or we're above everything, or we're completely incompetent, then we completely miss out on the opportunity to serve, to lead, and find solutions as the world is changing. How can we innovate and lead the way if we have this attitude?
Exactly. But there's so many myths around money and success, and I think in general, all of you just try to cleanse it out and understand that there are just old excuses for people who could make it. I've often talked about the fact that ambition comes from pain. Right? Personal ambition is always the feeling of lack. I want something and I don't have it. Right? I was told that I'm nothing and I'm going to show them. So all ambition comes from that type of suffering, and the stronger the ambition, the more damaged you are. So when we feel that we're not that damaged anymore, when we have done a lot of healing work, many people start feeling also that their ambition is starting to melt away. And this is also a thing among spiritual students in general, that they feel, I don't have an ambition, I've been there, done that. It's just that feeling. But it's coming from ambition as a way to compensate for a negative story, and then you just use the world in order to achieve that. So you can turn that around, because it's fully possible to have an ambition that is positive, but it's very different. Because the tipping point is when it's not about you anymore. When you look at very successful people, like many of them, they're not in it for the money anymore. They're not in it for that. They just want to have fun. They just want to create. They just want to lift the world and be part of something that is wonderful. And a lot of people in business and other kind of arenas in the world, they are in that energy. They just want to co-create. So what we can see in our own ambition is, if we want something and it comes from pain, it stops with that obsession about getting something, and then you don't have a plan. What happens next? Many successful people are very driven through traditional ambition. They end up feeling depressed and empty once they reach their goals, because they really don't have a purpose. They just have a black hole that they want to fill with whatever they have defined as what will kind of medicate them. So once they reach the goal, they've got nothing, and it feels as bad or worse because it doesn't change anything. Now, how to do it instead is connecting to purpose. We need to understand, why do I want this? And not only that, we need to understand, how can this lift the world? How can this benefit more people than me? And people are co-creative. A lot of entrepreneurs, for instance, they're driven by the joy of being creative, right? It's not about themselves and filling a need. It's about what can be achieved with other people, for other people. And that's when it moves into spiritual expression and co-creation. So in yourself, when you feel, I just want that, and the brain has no purpose beyond that with whatever your goal is, yeah, that's a compensation strategy that comes from pain and suffering. And that is not necessarily something that will heal you. When you want to do something because it brings something to the world, it brings creativity, it makes also you able to partake in something greater than you, and you feel that joy, and you can understand the purpose beyond filling a need, then you're onto something. Because this is where we go also when we are an expert, right? Take a musician, for instance. The point of being a musician is to play for other people, right? There's a limit to how much fun it is just to sit like at home, like playing by yourself. It's when you have a concert, it becomes co-creational. Every musician knows that the audience is actually playing the musician and decides what happens. Actors know this too. So it's that. It becomes co-creational. That comes from abundance. This will always bring the world forward. So my point here is that when it comes to money and success, it can come from love. It can come from expansion. It can come from joy and everything that can uplift. It does not have to be that kind of attachment, which is always connected to what we resist, what we are in denial of, right? And this is also one of the things that is so wonderful on this planet today. We don't have to stay in resistance. We don't have to focus only on what we don't want. We can also stretch for what we actually want, how we want to express, how we want to explore, right? How we want to play, how we want to be part of things we haven't been part of before, enter new spaces. It's all possible. So today, it's so important that part of our spiritual practices is to find a way in. We need to participate. We need to set goals, right? We need to be productive in life. We should, by all means, try to become successful. And there are so many ways to achieve success. We have any questions?
Yes, Martina in Germany, she wonders, where do we place the most, arguably the most famous sort of entrepreneur and innovator today, which is Elon Musk? Where does he fit into what you're describing now?
Well, without going too much into him, because that belongs to him, I think it's quite obvious that he has a combination of both. His dad is, by all means, a terrible person. And he was abusive and also a narcissist. So that didn't help. Or it helped, you know. So obviously having that type of dad created an enormous ambition, because his dad always told him that he was worthless, right? Would never be as good as him, right? Because he's the best, you know. So that thing is what will feed traditional ambition. But he also has the playful side. So I think the key to his success is that he has both types of ambition at the same time. And because of his upbringing, he can't stop, because he will never be satisfied, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing, because it means ultimately you're doing it for yourself, right? So, but there are as many different paths as there are people. We all need to understand what is success to us, right? And success can mean so many different things. And so it does not always have to be about money, although money is a big part of our culture, it's a part of our civilization, because we all need it to survive. We cannot pretend we don't need it. This is also why we need, as spiritual seekers, to let go of our allergy towards money and success, seeing it as something negative that we should not be part of. We should be part of it. There is nothing wrong about wanting a good life, wanting things. If you are a corrupt being, if you have that type of resistance in you, sure, you will get greedy and this or that. Well, it's in you from before. It's not like it will all of a sudden be there, and it wasn't. It's simply that you have more, screen to project onto, which means, we're working with our karma. It's not just that it's sequenced. Now you're doing this, now you're doing that. It's also based on opportunity. So let's say that a specific type of karma in you needs a specific type of projection. And all of a sudden you have access to a space where there is a lot of manifestations or things to project onto based on this karma. Then it will blow up. And we'll say, oh, I have a lot of this karma. You have a lot of every type of karma, but you now have the opportunity to have this karma being shown to you from several different angles at the same time. And this happens, for instance, when we do something and then we are consumed by it and say, oh, the ego is really taking over here. Yeah. Well, this is just that you're now in a space that gives you the opportunity to go more in depth. It was all in you, but now it's projected more kind of widely. This is the only difference. It's not that you created more karma. It's simply that you're letting it surface. And it's always more than we think it is, right? So we can work on our karma also in a more linear way, that we have a little piece here and a little piece there and a little piece there, so we don't do it all at once. Or we can have it, in a space. So, for instance, when we have success, everything gets more kind of amplified, and it means that, yeah, we have a bigger space to project onto, which means that our resistance and often what is out of balance in us will be projected more strongly, because that's what we still need to work on, right? This is also why we can see people who have success, they often can be a little consumed by their own ego. It's natural, right? And it's not a bad thing. It simply means that what's in them is now more readily available for them, right? So we should not be afraid of engaging based on the old myth that if we stop projecting, there is no more karma, right? We should try to project as much as possible. This is the only way we can fully learn not just what our karma is, but also how to turn that around and heal and then become productive, to be in harmony with life and being able then to serve. We can do all of that in the same movement, right? So the horizontal world is extremely valuable. Mm-hmm.
Isabel in Germany, she wonders, how do we find the businesses or startups that are seeking to co-create and lift? What might be the best signs that those are what those people are up to?
I think the only important thing, it's an interesting question, but let's turn that around, because that's not really important. The only important thing is, what's your intention? Because remember that whatever is in the world, everything is on their own journeys, and that's fine. The full divine truth is present in every particle. Everything is present in everything. So, even if you have the most corrupt company, if you are in an intention of love, if you are in a true divine intention, that is what you will see. That's what you will be interacting with through that medium. So it's not important. The question is, how do we find this in ourselves? How can we be in a state so that we can project in a way that is spiritually productive? And the thing is, when you have love in your heart, it's all you can see in the world. And you'll be able to project love into also where it's needed. You will have compassion, and when someone behaves in a very destructive way, you will be able to see why and your instinct is to be part of the healing. You will not judge, you will not stay away. You will be available because you know that, life placed me here so I can be part of the balancing. Right? So it's never about finding the right things in life. It's for us to be the right thing in life. And that is really, the decision that we can make every moment. It's not up to the world to facilitate, again, the right moment, the right everything. It's up to us to be that.
We have a question in the audience. Press the red button, hold it, and then it will turn on. Underneath, on the bottom.
You talked about before that poverty also very often is connected to self-worth issues. So I guess when you are trying to have ambitions and plans to the greater good or to lift other people or to include other people, then you're automatically are working on your self-worth issues because you, I guess, will have more worth for real?
Yes, I've often had a very practical approach to self-worth issues. If you feel that you are worthless, it's probably because you are. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself, add worth. It's the logical solution. Learn to add worth. The thing is, when we have a low self-worth, often what we do is we become very self-absorbed and we feel sorry for ourselves. Are we then adding value to anything? Remember that value is a made-up concept. It's the price tag we place on each other, right? And often we can be shocked when we place a price tag on ourselves and nobody's buying it. The only price that is correct is how other people value what we do, value our presence. That is the only value that exists. So the price tag is basically, placed on you based on the evaluation of others. So if we feel that we're not being appreciated, well, you have no right to be appreciated. That is something that comes from you adding worth, adding value. So it's very simple. It's understanding okay, what are you bringing? Right? Because that's your job. It's not for other people to tell you. I talk to so many people who seem to believe that the world should accommodate them, see them, value them, confirm them. No, everybody's busy, feeling insecure. Everybody's busy hating themselves. Everybody's busy suffering and all that. We don't have time for that. And the thing is, often the people who want to be validated from others, they never do that for other people themselves, right? So self-worth is connected to how much value we bring others. Learn to do that. And it's very simple. Figure out how to be helpful. Figure out how to uplift people. It's always connected to not being self-centered, right? So when we have self-worth issues, we're often extremely self-centered. We care too much about ourselves and how we feel, and that does not add value to anyone. So if you want to do something about your self-worth, make yourself worth something by adding value. And it's basically looking at how can I contribute? How can I make other people's lives better? How can I uplift? How can I co-create? How can I do this or that? It's not about being appreciated. It's about not caring about that at all. And it's very, very simple. It's as simple as smile to other people, right? When we're at low self-worth, we don't smile to people. So we don't add the simplest level of value. Smile, be available, give compliments. Ask if you can do something for other people. It's very simple. It's not like you have to be Elon Musk. It's just looking at yourself, understanding that, well, this is what I got. How can I use that to create value? Because you will find when you do that, other people will value you and there will be an exchange. This world is highly transactional. So we need to figure out what can I give? And then we will also receive. This is how the world works. So if you feel that nobody's thinking of me, well, it's because you haven't given them any reason to. It may sound brutal, but this is basically how the life works, and we need to adapt to that. And it's not giving what you think you have, it's giving what's needed. Giving what other people actually need and what they value. And often that is different from what we feel that we want to give, but that's not important. You got to give what other people actually need. And over time, we learn to focus more on the receiving end than ourselves. And we'll learn to adapt and transform whatever we got, because that's a raw material. It only has value when it's used by someone else. And then we get something. It's wonderful, but it's very, very simple. But today we have this very toxic way of thinking, believing that the world owes us something from the very beginning, right? And we should be accommodated, we should be understood, we should be respected. And no, the world does not work that way. Never has, never will. It's about adding value. It's like, think whenever you have a conversation, if you think, how can I add value? Meaning, how can I make this conversation meaningful for the other person? Right? It's that simple. It's very, very easy to always make sure that you add more value to anything. It's like stretch, even like when you're cooking, like when you have guests, like just, go the extra inch. Do something that is just a little bit more than what's being expected. You can do that at work too. So this is also part of how we become successful. Being successful is not something we do on our own. There's no such thing as a self-made person. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's been talking a lot about this, saying that there is no such thing as a self-made person. First of all, you're made by your parents, and then you have your family and friends and community, raising you, and then you have your teachers and your mentors and friends. Like, you're being shaped by all of that, and it goes on throughout your life. It's a collaboration, always. And it's that you give what you have and you receive from others what you don't have, so you can grow even more. You get colors from others. It's basically like, kids. There are always these phases where, they collect stuff, right? It could be football cards or stickers or whatever. Like, you have what you have, and then you give away something and you get something you don't have. And then you have a lot of different variety of things, right? It's like that. But you need to understand what you're bringing. And if you, I don't got anything to get, well, do something about it then. Take a course, read a book, do something so you have a higher value in society. Because also, if you want, when it comes to money, if you want someone to pay you, you need to give them something worth paying for. This is very simple survival, but we can do it all the time. Absolutely all the time. And it means that when we are giving, when we're thinking of the people around us in a very concrete, productive way, and we figure out how can I add value to each situation, they will start giving more to us. And then we'll have this kind of co-creational orchestra around us, right? And we'll have access to so many things we're not able to come up with on our own. And this is how we feel rich, right? People with a lot of other people in their lives, they feel rich because they know they have access to colors and shades that they don't have access to themselves, right? So the exchange between humans are extremely important. This is also a success criteria. And to get to that point, you can't just like sit in a hut in the woods and meditate. You need to also engage in life, right? We can do both. But engaging and taking part in life is extremely important. And as I said, where the world is now, humans have never, ever had more opportunities. And you will see that so many people will be taking that opportunity and create great things. And some people will just sit there and be scared. It's the same world. We all have the same opportunities, and it's up to us to actually see the magic of the horizontal realities and how we can use it. We can become aware of everything in us. Everything, if we allow it, right? If we set the intention that I want to project everything that is in my ego. I want to project everything I'm not seeing, everything I'm in denial of. I want to project every particle of my resistance. Then you need, a lot of space and a lot of things. And life will then arrange your life in such a way that it will happen. And then you have to engage. You have to learn. But through engaging life, you can build a solid presence, meaning that you become more and more enlightened about who you are and what you are and where you are. And then your life will begin to move in a true spiritual direction, because this is how you reach the state of detachment. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Yep. So on YouTube, IKYA was reflecting that he's got a pretty good mix in his life, where at some point he knows kind of how to manifest just about anything, but at the same time he's only able to barely make ends meet no matter how much he earns. Also, as he observes, it seems like it's really difficult to work toward abundance in our current society, especially as cost of living. There's so many imbalances with cost of living and all that kind of stuff. So how can we attract more abundance when we kind of need to start from scratch today with a job, working and making money?
Right. I will answer this slightly differently. What's happening in the world today, also with inflation and all of that, if you zoom out, you will see something that's really interesting. We're in a big transformation on this planet. They will happen for the next 200 years, okay? But we need to be less comfortable. We need to be less complacent. We need to feel that we cannot stay. This is part of how evolution works, right? When you live in a certain area as an animal, and let's say the water source dries up, you have to move, you have to find a new place. So some of the animals may stay, they will die, and then you have the ones who begin the big journey to find a new lake or whatever. This is where we are. We can't be comfortable. So, how to make people do something? Through the economy. Right? Because money today is the very blood of our civilization. So when everything is more expensive, we have to become creative. People need to work harder. We need to do this or that, because very few people are untouched by this. Right? And if you zoom out and look at this, it's wonderful, because it forces people to fucking do something. No matter what it is, often it's just a matter of being confronted, making a few changes, being uncertain, because comfort and certainty is spiritual death. It means that we close our consciousness and then we just like cocoon and we have a very nice life, but we're not growing because there is no change. So this is part of the collective change. We need to experience uncertainty, right? Because when something is predictable, we stop learning. We just repeat, and that is spiritual death. So now things are becoming more uncertain. People are less comfortable in many areas. And we have to reinvent. We have to then work harder, which then means that that is uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable in itself is a key to changing the consciousness. Because the lazy animals say, well, maybe it will rain. If it's uncomfortable enough, they'll say, okay, like, we got to move. This is what's happening. So the fact that we are all becoming less comfortable in many different ways is a major key in how to move the collective consciousness more quickly, right? And through the economy, people have to move. They have to make changes. They have to change jobs, this or that. So most people are experiencing changes in their life, right? They're not major necessarily on an individual level, but collectively, when you look at the whole planet, we are on the move. So that is a big part of why this is happening and why it's necessary spiritually. We have to move more quickly. And part of that is also then that more resistance is also surfacing more quickly. So we're going through different conflicts, more extremism, more this or that, because we have to cleanse it out. We have a certain window that we're working with in order to either for the civilization to be canceled or for it to survive. And when you look at the kind of cycles, I've explained this before, there is a certain window. And certain things will have to happen within a certain time frame. And this is also part of why things are kind of speeding up and why more people will have to be uncomfortable. Because we need to reinvent ourselves as a civilization, also as a life form. It will take quite a bit of time, right? But the only thing we can for certain say that our current civilization is dying because it has to. And we can either let our civilization kind of reinvent itself or the whole planet will die. And it's not, it's not a good look for humans. So it's better for humans to be forced to reinvent, for humans to force to change and become better. I know for humans to become better seems like an impossible task, but if it's uncomfortable enough, humans are willing to change. We are hardwired to, whenever we find something that works, we are hardwired to repeat it indefinitely, no matter what it is, because that's survival. So it's very difficult when we are repeating something that seems to be working, and at the same time, the whole civilization, the planet, is dying, right? Because the brain cannot compute. I'm sorry, it can't compute either. That would be rather peculiar. But it cannot compute the bigger image because it's always the survival of oneself and one's closest ones. That's it. So on an individual, small group level, everything works fine, right? The human brain is not capable of looking at the bigger picture. It can only relate to what it's seeing, right? So this is why it has to be uncomfortable. And it's working. And it's also good because we also need for human spirituality to grow up. There are so many misunderstandings and childish superstitions that are really getting in the way for true spiritual work and for those who want to reach a higher level of consciousness for real. So we also need to reconsider our spiritual strategies and practices and beliefs and all of that. And this is helping. And as I said before, when expansions are happening, then there is more resistance. So of course now we have more orthodox religion and more belief systems and all of that as part of the resistance. And it's a sign that, yes, we're also moving forward. More individuals are connecting to what actually brings a higher level of consciousness, what brings healing for real, and that is confronting the old ways, which are then trying to hit the brakes as much as it can. It's a natural part of the process, but we are moving forward. So it's important that you also take this opportunity to look at in how many ways can you make yourself uncomfortable in kind of your established patterns of survival, right? Because we need to move. We all need to move. And we can move swiftly. We can move faster than ever, right? But we need to be uncomfortable first. So it is important that we actually challenge ourselves, that we make ourselves more uncomfortable. But in a way that makes us willing to try new things, to move forward, to adapt better habits, that we can say, yeah, okay, this is a better version. This is pointing forward. I'm trying to take more responsibility by doing this, right? We can all make improvements. But this is basically a project for the whole planet. And no human is untouched by this because it's necessary to raise the consciousness. And it's actually happening. As the most important tool to wake people up is by making everybody very uncomfortable and confused.
All right, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah. Another perspective, you're saying that the willingness to relate to your projections and to ask for more of them is key to having a richer, more abundant life.
Mm-hmm.
And if I, for example, feel the need to control the amount of projections that are present in my life, I limit this abundance. So, like I can easily feel overwhelmed when there is a lot of things happening, especially in my horizontal world that I have to relate to. And this kind of keeps me a bit more stuck in the horizontal world as well. It's hard for me to go into stillness and find a higher consciousness and stay in the vertical. So I was asking if you could like share a tool when we are increasing the amount of projections and things that are happening in our horizontal. How can we, even if we're doing spiritual practices, how can we relate to this and stay in the vertical as well?
I think it's, there are many different approaches to this, but understand that your body will die. And when we stop trying to avoid it from happening, we can start living for real. Because we can only live truly when we don't fear death. When we fear death, that will be behind pretty much every decision we make because that is survival, right? Rule number one of survival is do not die and do everything you can to avoid it. And then we'll become better at it. This is what comfort is. This is what repetition is. We have all these strategies, but then that is what life is. And then everything we do that is new contains a risk of death because we haven't mastered it yet. We haven't figured out what to repeat. So in the brain, we'll always be drawn to, well, do we have something similar that we've already repeated? Right? And we'll try to do that instead. Right? This is why, so like, when Americans go to Beijing, they will still go to McDonald's, right? It's that. And so we need to confront our fear of death. And this is also what we can do in meditation, because then we're more vertical. So we connect with the fact that, oh, I exist outside this body. I exist outside this horizontal reality, outside this timeline, outside this space. I'm me. I exist forever. I'm a divine being. And often, when we reflect on this, we can start seeing our life as just, oh, right, this is just like, an avatar. This is just a little doll I'm playing with. And I'll get tired of it and I will get a new one. So we can work on our fear of death because it is horizontal, it's not vertical. In the vertical consciousness, we have absolutely no fear at all because the only thing worth fearing is death. And when you understand that is not real, there's no fear at all. So it's trying to then inject that freedom from fear into your horizontal being. And then focus on what can be achieved. And then when it's like, oh, there's no limit. I have no limit. My body may have limits, but I don't. Well, where are they? Right? Because when we're afraid of death, we will try to limit. We need to protect. We will do as little as possible. Right? Because if we think of trying to avoid death, we will always do what is safe. Repetition and as little as possible. And many people, they do as little as possible. They do what they know, and then maybe they add a little thing. You know? They have a glazed donut, and next time they have a glazed donut with some sprinkles, right? It's that, right? We just take very small steps because it's safe. So when we inject that we're fearless, we open up and we're able to make very different choices, because now it's more interesting what can be achieved than how to avoid death. People do not achieve great things by avoiding death. They do it by defying it. Right? If you look at, climbing Mount Everest, right? There are hundreds of dead bodies there because they did not do it to not die. Then they would stay at home, right? They did it because they wanted to achieve something great that meant something. And so it is with everything in life that means something. It represents risk for the body, but not for you as a being. Is learning to balance that, because comfort is, in a way, the illusion that you've tricked death. I can't die for as long as I'm here, right? That's the feeling, that's comfort. This is why it's so highly addictive. But living can also be addictive. And you see people who do great things. Mountain climbers is an excellent example, because they can be addicted to that sense of freedom and greatness. And you get a feeling that I live forever. Death is not a thing. And so when you see kind of dead people on your way up, you're just like, good for you. It's like, it's a transcendence. It's not death, because death would be staying at home for those people, right? So even though their bodies are dead, you recognize that, yeah, they lived at least. It's that, right? So we need to open ourselves up to living. Most people today are not living, which is so interesting, because we have never had this many opportunities, and we're using it to create more comfort, more repetition. We're becoming more biased, less tolerant, which means we're protecting, and all there's left now is our gadgets and buttons, right? And we just want to have things our way, and we stop communicating with people. We just yell at them on social media. And it's all of that. So we're basically, building this wall around us. And it means that we are living in a space, on a planet, in a civilization which has never offered more opportunity to rapid growth, healing, spiritual expansion, human expansion, everything. It's like we've added millions of new colors that didn't exist before. And people use that to sit still and to implode and to go on repeat and become spiritually dead and to close their consciousness. Well, we can also do the opposite. But to do that, we need to choose to live. This is also why it's so important to have goals, have positive ambition. We need to want the world. And many of you, you've had these incarnations where the whole point of incarnating was to escape it, because this is just suffering and it's not who I want to be, right? And it's a big misunderstanding. It's through these worlds that we're able to manifest our consciousness, to manifest our love also for God, to both serve and to achieve great things, and to prove to ourselves, who are we? What am I made of? What is my essence? Right? And this is a moment on this planet where that will be part of lifting the planet. We cannot have a bunch of spiritual people sitting in the corner, sucking their thumbs and being afraid of living. Right? You need to go out there, be successful in every possible way to unleash everything you're made of, and do something with your life. It's absolutely worth dying for, because you're going to die of something anyway. It might as well be from success, right? At least then it had purpose. So it's like we need to fight the instincts that are in the collective mind and just more and more comfort, because it's spiritually killing you. Look at the world. Look at what it's offering. And you can say, this is what God is giving. This is what all the spiritual beings are giving you. Because we're spiritual, always given the opportunity. Then it's up to us, because how else would we learn? Right? If you want someone to learn and to study, you would give them books, you would give them schools, you would give them all the opportunities they have to go into like real in-depth studies. And this is what this planet is. Right? So life has already given you more than you could possibly ever want. And yet, what we ask for is more comfort. Please give me this, please give me that, please make sure that this doesn't happen. We just want more comfort. People are praying for more comfort. Right? And no. When we recognize that what is happening in the world now is the greatest gift anyone could possibly ask for, and you're in the middle of it, we have no excuse not to achieve success. And no matter, it doesn't always have to be about money. I say it could be in relationships, right? It can be talents. Be a musician, be a great cook, be whatever you want, but achieve success in something, because you can. Then you also add value, not just to yourself, but to the world. Use this planet. Be part of it. When I look at the whole kind of modern spiritual community as a whole, it's an embarrassment, right? If we were to collect all of them, like in a field, right? It's not the most successful people. And we should be. If we truly relate to spiritual growth, we would see what life has given us. We would attack it with great joy and enthusiasm to squeeze every drop. Because that is how you enjoy something. That's how you appreciate a gift. If someone bakes you cake, you appreciate it by eating it. And sometimes by devouring it. It's not by putting it aside and looking at it. Right? So being a spiritual student means to truly engage in life every moment. And that means constant reinvention, constant innovation in life. Right? So please try to inspire each other to be more active. Because this is also, if you want more money, it's not trying to sit there and just manifest. As I've explained many times before, manifestation is basically when you place a focus, your brain will start looking for it. It's that simple. You will gravitate towards what is on your mind. This is why also you will never be able to manifest what you want. You can only manifest what you are. Right? What you're filled with, what your personality is, that is what you're drawn to, because you're drawn to your own projections. So when you project what you actually want, you will begin to notice those manifestations in the world. You will recognize those doors, those openings, those opportunities. It's not magic. It's just how our brain works, and this is how we're supposed to use it. by interacting with the horizontal world and become productive and achieve success. Learn how to manifest, which basically is just you gravitating towards whatever you focus on. It's not difficult. So when you focus on magical beings, that's where you are. But if it's a fantasy, if it's not real, you are projecting that, and life cannot give you anything because it's not anything. To me, the kind of like the core part of spiritual awakening is reality. Wanting to be in reality, wanting to be real more than anything else. It's not about creating more fantasies and belief systems. It's the opposite. In the horizontal worlds, you can actually test out all your assumptions, because this world is real in essence, in principle. It operates based on natural laws, meaning that you can test yourself out and natural laws will respond to you. That's why we're here. So using this world as a lab, using it as a school, that is how you can become successful. You all have talents. You all have things that are unique to you, that adds value, right? But again, our incarnations, where we have spent time in solitude or where we have been taught that poverty is high consciousness or that we should just get away from here, you know, it's in us. I get it. It makes it difficult. But you chose to live on this planet right now. So, you know, join the party and figure out the rest.
First on YouTube, Linetta reflects that as a spiritual seeker, she seems to have a value system focused more on what she receives. And she has experienced two major successes in life that became larger than her, and it scared her, and she lost control and contracted and thereby lost the successes. And she wonders, are these rooted in self-worth, or is there some other mechanism at play here?
This is basically about control. It is very difficult. I know, like, everyone on a spiritual path, oh, we trust the universe. No, you don't. You just wanted to do what you wanted to do, right? And when we have experiences where the kind of organism that is life is behaving on its own behalf, most of us get very scared, because the relationship we have to life or the universe is basically prayer. Please give me this. And then we really hope for it to happen. If we see something, yay, it works. But it's just like seeing, you know, even when it can be very slight, it's just like if you stand on the shore and you see like the biggest wave coming, and it's like, you know, when you experience the power of nature for real, right? It can be wind, it can be hurricanes, it can be like where you feel that as a human, I got nothing. I have no power, like, you know, it's too powerful. It's that, right? Because it corrects our perspective, because humans believe that we can control nature. Look at how much we destroy, right? But when it comes to the pure forces of nature, we have nothing. And it's very healthy to experience that. But spiritually, we can also experience that sometimes. Having these little droplets of experience where life itself is showing that it's moving, it's kind of manifesting and behaving beyond our control. And it gives us very much that same fear. So it's that. Again, remember that we all incarnate into a life form that is obsessed with controlling nature, because that is how humans have been successful, right? It started by, you know, finding a stick and using it to, you know, pick up like ants or whatever and killing each other with stones. And it's just like, that's controlling nature. It's using things in nature. And then we became better, farming this or that. It's always about controlling nature more and more. It's how we survive. It's in our genetics at this point, right? So we are fearful of any situation where we feel that I can't control nature. And we don't want that to be a thing. This is why comfort is so important, because it's the opposite. I control everything, right? Nature has got nothing on me. I'm here in my space. Nobody can reach me. So it's just that. So although we can be triggered into fear or whatever, it's quite healthy. And then we can learn to work with nature. It's just like farming. So it's just that. And I think most people on a spiritual path, they have this type of experience from time to time. Mm-hmm.
We've got a question in the audience.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I had that experience of just being light body, and it was quite a while without breath. And then eventually I started to come back, and these layers started to come back on. And then last I came to personality, and it was like, yeah, it's used here, or it's useful here. I think it was the kind of energy of it. But it's still back to the same karma, same lots, even with these deep experiences. So I just wonder, how can we transcend in the day to day when we know what we are?
Right. The thing is, true transcendence can only come by dissolving karma. Right? It's when we've done our job. So it's more a matter of, through spiritual practices, to move into alignment, to raise our consciousness, and then go into the karmic work, because that is still there. But understanding more of who we are, what the purpose is, we can do that work more efficiently, right? And we do not necessarily relate so much to the stories and the whining of the mind. But again, back to what we talked about in the beginning, it's never about stopping the projection, stopping interaction with our karma. Remember, we can never create karma. We can only kind of work it out. It can only diminish. And it's important to understand this. I often, if we think in a timeline, when we start a spiritual journey, billions of years ago, that's when the karma is on its max, because you have no consciousness, no nothing. And then you go through your whole evolution. For each experience you will have a little bit less karma, because you learn something and you change. So when we think that, I'm creating karma, no, it's just that you are in a situation where karma will be released, or it will be shown to you. So it is evolution. And it's you for each step. There will be less resistance. And you move into, also through that journey, more of who you truly are. That's what consciousness is. So spiritual practices will allow us to connect to higher consciousness, to understand what we're doing and why. And then we have to do it. We still have to do it. We still have to resolve our karma. We still have to do all that healing work. But we can be more enthusiastic about it. And we can, instead of fighting our growth, we can try to approach it. We can be more curious, because we're not fighting anymore. We will be curious, and we understand, right, by dealing with this karma, I will actually get closer to who I am. I will get closer to what life is and what the universe is. That's the potential. But then I have to change something in me to achieve that. So I will just focus on that. Instead of kick and scream and yell, I will take in whatever life is showing me, and I will try to change and transform. This part is a lot easier when we're doing spiritual practices. That is what we bring in. But the karma in itself does not change based on spiritual practices. It just increases our ability to work with a karma intelligently.
Okay, on YouTube, Raja Shri, she brings up corruption and bribery, which are definitely one of your favorite topics. And so basically in the West, we have a story that bribery and corruption are primarily in, developing countries and that kind of thing. But really, at some point, if you're an innovator or an entrepreneur, at some point there's either a temptation or a need for some level of greasing the wheel or, briberies, corruption, that kind of thing. She's wondering then, how should we deal with this from a spiritual perspective if we're trying to be one of those leaders out there?
Right. Understand that all humans are corrupt by default. And corrupt means trying to find shortcuts. And often they work better. I've used an example during war times. It's the corrupt people that keeps things going because you have the black market and this or that, right? It's people who are opportunistic and find shortcuts. That's the essence of corruption because they want to achieve something, it'd be personal or whatever it is. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You can also say, for instance, taxes are also an act of corruption. You are paying for comfort. You're paying for someone else to take responsibility for you. That is also corruption. You're paying your way to not deal with your own survival. Right? There are many ways to bribe. Everything humans do are basically trying to bribe something. Right? Because you have an intention. Often when we do something, when we interact with someone, it's not just that interaction, it's what we want with it. And then we can say what we're doing, that's the bribery. Right? It can be being extra friendly because we want a favor, it could be this or that, but if we're doing it all the time. So we need to understand that corruption is not necessarily bad. It's just trying to use opportunities and trying to cut through. Remember also that the laws and the rules we have in this world, in our civilization, it depends on the country, it depends on the situation. Laws change, so there's no universal right or wrong. Right? So when you look at, we have a lot of silly laws. And creative people will say, well, to get anything done, I'll just figure out a way to do it. That may be more creative than to not be corrupt. So humans are always trying to find better ways, to find shortcuts, to be more efficient. And that's part of evolution too. Corruption has always worked, has always sometimes worked better. It can be used in many, many different ways, but for the most part, when you look at human evolution, that is a strategy that often is very successful. And you will find people who can be very kind of corrupt in different ways. Who are also very good and decent people. You can find people who follow the law who are absolute assholes. Right? So we need to look at, it's really about how to get things done, how to move and how to maneuver. And it's just looking at, well, how can I achieve things based on where I'm standing and what I want to achieve. And we all act out of self-interest. That's part of being human. But it's always trying to also explore and see, what is this? And look at our own corruption. Because I think when we observe clear corruption, I think it simply gives us an opportunity to assess our own. We should not assume we're not corrupt. Maybe we simply haven't had the opportunity, right? As one says, in the mafia, anyone can be bought, it's just a matter of price. And that's true. It's absolutely true, right? So we just need to understand it's part of our genetics, it's part of our brain, it's part of how we operate, right? Remember that most people on average will break 5 or 6 laws every day. right? If we all were never to do that, the society would stop. And we would all be in jail all the time, so we would not be very productive. And, so it's that. It's like laws can have an intention. They're not always very practical. So it's also a realistic thought that most people will break laws all the time, and it's actually necessary. So this is also part of the picture. We need to be free and creative and just like, how can we make things work? Laws, man-made laws are not spiritual laws. And what we need to do always in our lives is look at, okay, I'm here, I want to express this or I want to manifest that. How can I do that? And we use the different tools available. And we can choose many, many different pathways. And it's all an experiment. And life will teach us. Life will always show us what is productive, how to be in balance. There are situations where following the law would be the worst thing you could possibly do. Right? Think in a dictatorship. Would it be the best thing to follow the law? Which means, for instance, you meet someone and they are behaving in a way that a dictatorship says, well, that person should be killed. And you're choosing not to hand them over to the police because these laws are completely nuts. Right? There are always situations where we have to be held accountable for our own values. And then we test them out. And then we are in communication with other people with different value systems and beliefs, and that's how it works. So everybody's corrupt. Everybody's bribing everybody else as much as they can, and there's nothing wrong about it. We always need to look at our own consciousness, our own value system, how we operate, based on what we want to achieve, and based on our own dialogue with life, because also with each level of consciousness, the rules change, right? The laws of nature changes. Everything changes, so nothing is constant. So my point is, be creative, right? In your own life, and just test things out. Life will always show you what's productive, how you can achieve a higher consciousness, how you can heal, how you can grow. At some time, life will show you pathways that will be surprising because you haven't thought of that. And of course you haven't, because it represents a step forward, right? But when it comes to corruption, all that, look at yourself, right? Look at what you're doing. Sometimes not bribing someone can be a corruption to your own dedication of following your own path. Right? There can be so many different ways to experience this complete confusion mindfuck thing. Right? This is why we should not look just kind of to rules and laws, but we need to connect with higher consciousness in ourselves and like, okay, how can we move? What is in our hearts? What do we see as the highest way for us to engage and deal with this, whatever it is? So be playful and explore, and ultimately it's the laws of nature that will be mirrored back for you to learn how to be more in harmony and how to navigate.
So on YouTube, Tobin observes that oftentimes the people he sees around him who are the most successful, even when they're operating from a place of service, spiritual or otherwise, tend to push themselves and exhaust themselves to maybe even a breaking point. Is it possible to find better balance?
Often, people who do exactly what you described find better balance. You know, I think for many people, when they have a positive ambition, they also want to know, what's my limit? How far can I go? Right? We need to understand what we're made of. And we only know that for certain when we go too far. We can only discover a boundary or, a limit once we cross it. So I would say it's necessary. It's part of it. If you want to know what's my limit, you have to find it. If you're trying to save it, you're acting from fear. So often when you then basically, move through that wall, at least you know. But most people actually have it in them to want to figure out, what am I made of? What are my outer limits? And people who want success, who see themselves as they want to climb, they want to create and do things, they are curious, right? What can I actually do? So we're not supposed to stop. We have it in us. We're also programmed to seek greatness. Once we're on that path, something happens to most people when they activate that kind of energy and that drive in themselves. They want to push the boundaries. So if we think from the perspective of this body is going to die anyway, and sure, and that's not a thing. Even if we take it past the boundary, doesn't mean that we're taking it too far. It'd be like, okay, we had an impact. Sometimes even we can injure ourselves and it's still worth it. Right? At least when we die, we go, well, I used that body up, nothing left. At least we did something, right? That is more important. Just maintaining the body and being comfortable, it's a waste of life. It's not greatness. It's not nothing. And it's important to understand that too, that often when we talk about balance, we talk about how can I do something but still be untouched by it and still be comfortable, right? That balance point, like always maintaining comfort. No, that's not balance. Maybe going too far is balance, because maybe then at least you're standing in nature. Then you're standing in life. Maybe you're activating what you are spiritually by doing that. Maybe that's the balance point. Maybe you're so blinded and numb by comfort and repetition at this point that we claim the balance point is way off. And we need to question all of this, right? The most important thing we can do when we are alive is to live. And the consequence of really living is death. But then we have lived. The thing is, when we don't live, we're kind of dead all the time. So we haven't even had a life. Right? So, but as the most successful people, many people never find that balance, but once we have figured out where the outer limits are, we often are able to figure out how to operate just within those limits. But of course, those boundaries are placed differently in each person, so we all have to push until we find them. I think it's healthy. I think anyone who wants to achieve anything have done this. And many of you have too, right? And it's actually healthy. It expands who you are, and you get a more realistic experience and kind of knowledge about who you are. Gain self-confidence because now you know. You know more about what you're made of. You will have a stronger trust in your own capabilities. So going past those boundaries are more healthy than not doing it.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the audience, so our last question on YouTube is maybe a little bit back to the starting point, a fundamental question of how do we reconcile spiritual service with our personal motive to survive through our work?
The thing is, service is ultimately about you letting what you are and what you have be available to life, and then for you to use that in a co-creational way. It's not enough just saying, oh, please God, use me. if you don't know anything or if you don't have any talents or capabilities. Not only that, you are the one who are supposed to manage and understand how to apply yourself. So, the horizontal worlds are here for us to figure out who we are, how we are unique, like what we are made of and what we've got, and also how the world works. So we also, through that, understand how to apply ourselves. So, through the karmic process, which is the individual, personal one, so through projection and attachment, all of that, we learn. Because then we learn the difference between our assumptions and what we think we want. And then we have nature showing us, nah, it's not quite that. This is how it works. This is nature's kind of response to that, and that will be kind of the karma that you need to resolve to then move into harmony with life. So that is, over time, how you move into service, because it's through your karmic work that you are able to unlock and activate all your talents, all your intelligence, everything that you are. It's the only way. So whenever we have a realization, and a realization, the way I define it, is when you've done that karmic work, right? And you interact with some particle of karma, and you get it, and you're understanding, and you have transformed, you're able to move in harmony with life in that exact point, then you understand something about life and yourself in the same point, and that will be a spiritual realization. And then you understand it, and then you are to practice it, so it becomes part of your personality, so it's just how life is. Right? We do this again and again and again and again. And every time we've been able to realize something and practice it so it's part of who we are in service. Because now what we do will be in harmony with life. And as part of that, we behave as life. Life will start to flow through us and express itself through those particles of realization that now is part of our being. The rest is yet to come. But whenever we have done that karmic spiritual work and we've had the realization, it becomes just part of how we operate, then life will express itself through those parts of us and we will be in service. So it's important to understand that we are in service through who we are, what we have, and how we live and how we apply things, because that is also our choice. It's up to us to figure all of that out. It's also up to us to figure out, how can I apply this? I've often compared this to, if you are a very specific ingredient, right? And life is food. And all that exists is just different dishes, different combinations of things. That is basically what the whole universe is. It's up to you to figure out, how do I flavor this? How do I flavor that? You know, when I'm added to this, what happens? So what we do in life is basically that. Our presence, our karma, everything, when we interact, we'll learn more about ourselves and what ingredient we are, because we don't understand, right? You don't understand an ingredient in the kitchen until you use it with something else, right? Wheat flour. It's nothing, but yet you can bake breads and cakes and this and that, and then you understand what wheat flour is. Like, you know, it's that co-creation when you combine it with other things. It's the same with you. So if you only had baked one cake with you as wheat flour, you say, oh, this is who I am. Then you're saying, oh, right, I can be pretty much any type of cake, any type of bread, this or that. I can be in sauces, I can, you know. Then you begin to understand. But that is part of the journey, and this is service. Because then you as an ingredient become available as an ingredient that other people can also use in their dishes, because you understand what you are and how that can be utilized, right? That is ultimately what service is. So the horizontal journey is for all of us to figure that out and then learn how to apply ourselves in this enormous kitchen of the universe, so we can all create in like eternally. There are always new combination, new stuff, so there's always more to learn. And this is what spiritual success is. It's that state of absolute co-creation with everything you are. And to get there, you need to test yourself out in every possible way. This is why you incarnate. This is why you need to be part of the world. And success is simply when you have figured out how to apply yourself productively into a co-creation. Right? Wheat flour, chocolate cake, ooh, it works. It's that. That is success, and you have to do it again and again. So we need to be part of the world. We need to engage. Most of our experiments will not go anywhere. That's okay, right? But seeking success in life, seeking money, wanting a good life, and being good at that also means that you are using more of yourself. Just think of if you have a family. If you have a family, you have a house, you have, this or that, you have kids, you like career. There's so many different things you need to utilize inside yourself. Right? You're learning about yourself. So living is the most important spiritual practice. It's where we learn. It's all about co-creation, not about just being available. So use the world, because if not, the world will use you. As a spiritual student, we are supposed to take initiative. We are supposed to be the fearless ones, the ones who go where nobody else has ever been before. We are to push the boundaries. We are to show people that they don't have to be afraid, that we can do anything and achieve anything, and that we all have it in us. So rip out all the old belief systems about what a spiritual path is, what a spiritual practice is. Embrace the world in ways you've never embraced it before. See that this is what God has given you. This is the magical place. It's not something you should try to get away from or to shield yourself from. Go all in. Have fun with it. And try to inspire other people. This world, our civilization, this life form has barely started. The best is yet to come.
Thank you, IKYA. Thank you all for joining us tonight for IKYA Live, world news from the spiritual perspective, and again, your premier news program for practical spiritual advice for your everyday life. Already now, before we sign off, go ahead and share tonight's episode with fellow spiritual seekers so that they too can tune in to how to deal with an uncertain economy and world out there and become spiritual leaders. And be sure to come back and join us next Monday at 19 o'clock Oslo time, as we will be back here for IKYA Live. Until then, be well.